Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly blockchain gaming roundup. Today is Friday, the 13th of October, and I am your host, Jenny Jordan, and with me is co-host John Jordan. But before we jump into it, I should say that you will find all of our latest content on our website, blockchaingamer.biz, where we got features, interviews, and all the latest news. And follow us on Twitter at BCGBiz. Right, hello, John.
Brilliant.
Who you got with you?
Masking. I wondered if you turned into a penguin for a second there. It was quite uncanny.
Yeah, it's my my carrot buddy called Pengu, I think.
Because penguins love carrots.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, well-known fact. How are you?
Yes. Me and my Pudgy Penguin buddy are doing well.
Good.
I gave in when Pudgy Penguins came out in the UK. I went and bought some, so that's our little skit for today. No hats, just Pudgy Penguins. Although I do have to admit, but the Pudgy Penguins are not as good as the old famous Axie.
Oh, you got that one.
The original Axie.
Absolutely.
So this is a limited edition. I don't think these are not available in the stores.
We got
Bobby Axie.
crypto kitty as well, sitting here on a shelf somewhere, don't we?
We do have a crypto kitty. Yeah, have a plastic crypto kitty. I haven't got too many merches, but a few.
Maybe we need to sort of do it like the cool YouTubers do, where they decorate the whole room and background with all these merch.
Yeah, we're not. Let's not even pretend we're cool YouTubers.
No. Quite the opposite. I don't think we've got any aspirations to be. Anyway, let's dive into it. There's been some news this week as well.
Yes, there has been.
We've seen some investments, haven't we, in which I don't know if that's the best one to start with, but there we go. The 5 million seed, is it a seed round?
Second seed round,
yeah. For Game of Silks, which you have been looking into a little bit. It's
briefly, yeah.
Based on horse racing, and
I guess it's one of those interesting things that I would have never have thought of. The amount of horse racing games that sort of blockchain has attracted. I mean, there have been horse racing games. I mean, there's games about everything, I suppose, and there have been horse racing games. Just maybe ones I've not, not something that's caught my attention. But yeah, I mean, in the blockchain game world, there's been Zed-Run, I guess, is the famous one, and then there was what was that one? Peg Axie for a while, and I think there's a few others as well. So horse racing is a thing. Clearly, horse racing is sort of related to gambling, so that's sort of one thing, I suppose, the crypto interaction with. But Game of Silks is more interesting. So I don't have a deep understanding of it, but as I understand it, it is a horse racing and breeding game. But the NFTs are basically the sort of tokenized versions of real horses. So basically, they've done quite a lot of work behind the scenes and got lots of sort of licenses, the sort of licenses you would need to do horse racing tokenization. But basically, I mean, this will sound pretty ridiculous to anyone who knows about horse racing. From what I can see is every year a new bunch of sort of horses sort of start racing, and some sort of selection happens, and those are then minted, and people can buy them as NFTs. And then there is some sort of one aspect of it is you get rewarded for how well the physical horse does in the real world. There is a sort of blockchain-based reward system based on that. So there's that. You have land which you can build farms on, and you have like little avatar characters, which are, I guess, sort of like the jockeys, although I don't think they race on they sit on the horses or anything. So there's sort of some fantasy aspect of it, some real world sort of mapping in there, and I guess there's some ability for those horses to do things on the blockchain world as well. But yeah, what's interesting is the investment didn't really say exactly who had invested in them, but one of the companies who invested in them was called TaylorMade, who actually seem to be the main company who trade thoroughbred racehorses. So if you want to buy a racehorse, there are companies that deal with that. So they're one of the investors in this blockchain games company, American company, and the other one is Funfair. And Funfair, I won't go through all the details as I bored you with last night, but anyway, Funfair is a UK fund that actually spun out of, I think it was called Funfair Technologies, that did a lot of online poker. One of it's about 10 years ago. When online poker got very big, they were like an online poker platform where you sort of had avatars and stuff, and they got into Web3. At one point they had a token and they tried to do a whole bunch of tokenized gambling stuff, which I don't think worked out. But one of the things they now do is have a venture fund. So they've invested in quite a lot of things. Not much game stuff. Petaverse for some reason, but also they got involved in this game of Silk. So it's sort of an interesting, not generally what we would consider the stuff we cover as sort of blockchain gaming, but it clearly is a sort of aspect of the real world and blockchain, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah, interesting.
Cool. And in another investment news, there were Wemade's Remix, Web3 subsidiary Remix, South Korean, which is invested in Chinese blockchain game developers. And they basically got a fund of 30 million, but out of that, they've invested 6.4 million into these 5 Chinese Web3 game developers. And that's in... They have that one together with Mirana Ventures, which is owned by the crypto trading platform Bybit. And
again, sort of not a lot of detail on that, is there? Sort of,
no, we didn't.
They've not said who the Chinese companies are, although they have. I did notice they had released screenshots of the games. So if you knew Chinese game developers, you could probably work out who they were. But yeah, so they've got this sort of fund with this other company, and they got 30 million. They spent some of it, and they said they're going to sort of spend some more. It seems like that fund is specifically focused towards Chinese mobile game developers. So
yeah,
as you sort of track in the big blockchain games list, Wemix is really all about volume. So they want to have like 100 games signed up, and I don't know how many they've got out at the moment, quite a lot, and they're really sort of. My approach is they're sort of throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, which is not the approach I would do, but it is an approach people take in business. So they're basically just taking a lot of games, sticking blockchain in them, and then sort of seeing which ones are successful. And they have Mirror 4 is their big successful game. That's their own internal big MMORPG that they've added blockchain to. And now they're sort of taking all these other games from various sort of companies. I think they have modified their strategy a little bit. That they used to have every game had its own token, which obviously was ridiculous. So now they're sort of trying to sort of integrate everything around the Wemix token itself, which obviously sort of makes sense that you have that's the underlying token that sort of feeds into all these other projects. So yeah, I mean, yeah,
it just generally aligns with this trend, doesn't it? In Asian Web3 gaming, that everyone talks about that as sort of the big market, and the amount of games that you see there, or existing Web2 games that adopt blockchain and slowly integrate these features, or just this completely new set of Web3 gaming catalogs and platforms.
Yeah, I mean,
like you say, that there's an awful lot coming out, and not everything is going to be a hit. But it's almost like what if, why not try kind of thing. Well, bit different to the kind of more would you say it's kind of a bit more intentional from Western developers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big trend sort of actually this year, if not quite at the end of the year yet, but one of the trends I don't think has been highlighted that much has been this sort of bifurcation of global markets. So sort of something that Sue from Animoca has been banging on about, and I spoke to him at the start of the year for the podcast, and that's how I got sort of he was really banging on about it, and we've just seen that sort of develop over the years with sort of what's gone on in US in particular about sort of crypto and what's going on with the sort of with the Sam Bankman-Fried trial at the moment, and still everyone's sort of kicking down on crypto in the West, and obviously crypto prices not recovering, so it's still very there's obviously loads of stuff happening in Western markets, but there's not a lot of sort of market upswing. There's not a lot of excitement around that. Whereas I think I wouldn't say there's have to be a little bit careful. Absolutely, not being in the Asian markets, you sort of don't get a feel for it in the same way. But there's definitely sort of official approval in the way that there isn't in the West. So Japan, in particular, talks about. I think they're talking about Web3, and they sort of have these very strong guidelines now about what they're doing. Singapore, again, very, very sort of keen on that sort of stuff. Even though they've had sort of regulatory problems with the Three Arrows Capital people last year. China harder to work out, but it looks like there are official NFT things going on there. Quite, if that's proper, what we would count as blockchain or sort of private blockchain sort of stuff. But there is stuff going on in China, and as sort of Wemix are pointing out, they're investing in Chinese developers. Korea, you could argue it is the hotspot of blockchain game development. All the companies are doing something. Again, we could argue whether we think they're doing it in the correct way, but they're very committed to it. So, I wouldn't say necessarily a Korean blockchain game is going to be the breakout hit over the next year, but over the next 5 years, that would seem fairly. You think there'll be some fairly good sort of products coming up there. So there's definitely a sort of a split there, and more generally, obviously, games like Axie Infinity, got a lot of their.
Well, exactly. I was going to sort of go into that one, sort of on that line. You've been looking at these tokens, gaming tokens this week.
Yeah.
And two of the ones you've highlighted there are Asian. I don't know, Hytopia, that's US based, isn't it? But, so you have Axie, Ron token.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got Wemix token.
Yeah, so basically what I did was I looked at the, the price of a token was on the 1st of January 2023, and then its price now. So it's roughly sort of 3/4 of the way through the year. I mean, those sort of things you have to be a little bit careful about. The starting, the exact date you start and the exact date you look at stuff. There could be sort of sampling bias. If you were like a week earlier and a week later, it might really skew the results. But generally, I don't think this year for crypto was sort of. Generally was good in the first quarter. Things went up quite a lot, and then things have sort of slipped back since. So my general idea before I started doing this, I'd track about 185 tokens. I thought most things would sort of be down, and sort of the average was 26% down. So most things were down, and so some of the bigger tokens like Sandbox is down, obviously Gala's down. What else is there? Axie AXS token is down. Those are down like 20%, something like that. But there were, I was surprised that there were some that were up quite a lot. So some of the ones that were up quite a lot were just sort of ones that I haven't got a good sort of fix on the project. And, in these sort of markets, there is just sort of noise. It's not always signal. So some projects can just, from a very low base and very low liquidity, sort of do quite well.
Yeah.
So it's not like I would point out all of those projects had significance. But yeah, as you point out, there were some. So there was the sort of most solid sort of project that did well was Hytopia, that used to be called NFT Worlds, sort of rebranded. And they're sort of building out their own Minecraft blockchain project. So they were building, they were building NFTs on Minecraft, and then Minecraft said you can't do blockchain NFTs, and they had a massive hit. And then they basically decided they were going to basically build their own Minecraft sort of clone, all open source, also so fully blockchain. And they got quite a lot of support for the community for that. So they're doing that. They have the land NFTs out there and this token. So you can see why that's done well, because they were really hammered down when Mo Yang said you can't do blockchain, and basically the price of all their assets went down. And then they basically said, no, we're going to do this. And so that's a positive sort of story. Of course, the thing's not really out yet. It's in beta, so you can't really tell if it's going to be successful as a project. So there's that one.
That's expected at the end of this quarter 4, I think 2023. Yeah. It's expected a beta launch.
Is it? Well, you would know. Yeah. Okay. Oh, cool. You were telling me that, not asking me that. And then there was the Wemix token was up. I mean, that's been up quite a lot and has come down. So it's a slight function of sort of the timing, sort of sample sort of bias there. But they're a big company in Korea, so there's you can sort of something people can sort of, that company's not going to go bust anytime soon. They're not like a pure Web3 company, so you can sort of see why that would have went up. And they raised some money from Microsoft as well, so you can see there's a sort of vague reason why that token would have gone up. And then the other one is Ronin, the Ronin token, which is the blockchain for Axie Infinity, as you point out. And again, that's another one that's sort of, it's up like 50% on what it was in January, but it's down like 50% from the peak, what it was in sort of March. So you have to be a little bit careful about sampling. But again, I mean, that's sort of if you broadly think of the sort of the rolling price going up as a bet that Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis is going to do okay, and if you think what they've done, they're rebuilding all the games. They've got 2 sort of new games coming out around the land NFTs, or games that are live around land NFTs. They've got this green light thing for loads of community games. I think half a dozen of those. They're going to be releasing games that are nothing to do with Ronin. They've announced sort of the first, I can't remember how many there is now, sort of 6, 7, 8, something like that. So again, a lot of that stuff is still baked into the future. These games are not out yet; they may not be successful, clearly. But it's not a massive surprise that those tokens are up. But I guess the point is, even like the Hytopia one, I think that was up about 400%. In the bull market, we saw things up 2,000%. So it's still very sort of capped within the general atmosphere of sort of a bear market and people not really caring very much. So
good. And this week, I think it was this week or end of last week, we were made aware of a new fully on-chain game not coming out anytime soon, but they've announced sort of more details of the project, which is the former Neopets team. And they're building a 3D MMORPG, fantasy world, not fantasy world, adventure world, dragons. And next week we'll actually be having an interview with the co-founder, Donna Powell. But that's an interesting part, again, sort of seen in this wider trend now of fully on-chain games rising. And the reason I started thinking of that is because you were talking about kind of the Hytopia not being able to do what they wanted within Minecraft. And these kind of come from a similar background where they have had this vision of, I think it was 2014 even, that they wanted to build this and integrate it as Web3, and it's just not worked for them. And now finally, sort of with the advancing technology and on-chain gaming obviously becoming a bigger thing by the day, really. So it's interesting, all these projects that seems to move to Web3 because that's the only option sort of for them. They can't really realize that sort of game vision within the sort of old traditional technology.
Yeah, and I think you're right that that sort of stuff is coming to the fore now because we have the sort of blockchain infrastructure that allows that. So obviously sort of L2s. So we're talking, we've got a podcast coming out next week with Proof of Play, who do the Pirate Nation one, which runs on Arbitrum, and that's sort of fully on-chain game. You couldn't really do, a year ago, you couldn't have done that really. Your Dragons game that you're very excited about is running on the ICP blockchain, which we haven't seen a lot of games on so far, but that's a sort of high performance blockchain. So we'll see how that sort of plays out. We should also, I guess, in this context, mention, I think we mentioned it last week, that Star Atlas's sites, Sage Labs, fully on-chain Solana game, doing 2 million transactions a day. So I think at one point last week it was doing 15% of all the transactions on Solana from a fairly small number of wallets, less than 10,000
wallets. Last week
wallets.
it was like 3% of all the Solana, and now it's 15% of Solana transactions. Quite a leap.
And if you play the game, it's you could play it from a command line. You could play it in text. It's not graphically it's awful. And I've lost one of my ships.
Did you find your ships? I think we mentioned last week that you had lost your ships.
I haven't found it. No, I've lost one of my ships somewhere in the universe. You're supposed to organise them into fleets, and I had a fleet with one ship in, and then I disbanded the fleet, and now I've lost the ship.
Funnily, then you suggest to me that I should play the game, and if I do it, I would probably blow up the whole.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an on-chain game, so the thing's just somewhere. It's just the user interface isn't very good. So these things are sort of, again, it's fully on-chain games. It's very sort of clunky. A lot of the stuff. I mean, I guess we'll see next year. I mean, your Dragons game is not out till 2025, I don't think. And David Amore from Playmint, his game's coming out next year. I mean, I guess that'll be the first probably on-chain game from a well-recognized sort of game developer. I suppose the Proof of Play one is as well, but a bit of an earlier stage. So again, all these things are blockchain games is interesting because it is such at the cutting edge that every 6 months there's sort of new stuff you can do that you literally couldn't have done before, and I guess it does get around to the problem that which is a valid criticism that a lot of people say about blockchain games as well. You just make why do you need blockchain for this game, and that's sort of something that's a good sort of argument to put to many projects, and maybe that they did blockchain, or we know loads of. I mean, I know people who added blockchain to their pitch deck because that's where the money was, and now they're adding AI to their pitch deck because that's where the money is. I mean, that's sort of what founders do. But we are seeing now with fully on-chain games, clearly, those are the sort of things that you could do it from a centralized database, but you wouldn't bother because why? It makes no sense. The whole point is people own their stuff, and everything that happens on chain, and people can build their own interfaces and build their own sort of tools on top of that, which is sort of we won't see that probably for 5 years or so, but it's a fascinating idea. Autonomous worlds is the term that people use. So,
and both kind of the examples we mentioned, like Proof of Place, Pirate Nation, and Dragons, the developers there both had to close down their games because of this, the servers and stuff because of various pressures. So that just shows. I mean, with an on-chain game, that can't happen. You have the security there, and players have the security of knowing that it won't go away for as long as that chain is running anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Let's move on. And we have this StrayShot game on Scale that had was iBlock Studios has made a deal with IP company BigBallerBrand for his forthcoming PC game StrayShot. I'm reading from the screen here, so it's a bit.
It's one of those stories that only in America. Only in America would a famous basketball player have the surname Ball. I mean, it's sort of, with Americans, I assume they sort of made their names up. But so I mean, I know nothing about basketball clearly. But I can't even remember the guy's name. But there's a family, and the dad's famous. He was an American footballer, I think, and a basketball player. And he's like 6'6". The mum's 6 foot. The kids are all like 6'8" or something. It's just ridiculous, just size wise. And I think one of the kids is an American footballer, and two of them are basketball players, and one of them just signed a $260 million 5-year deal for Chicago Bulls or something. So there's a very famous American basketball player who's just signed a sort of deal for this shooter game, which runs on Scale, which is again another L2. So it's sort of sort of funny how I get educated about American sports through through writing up blockchain game press releases.
Yeah. Right, and Nitro Nation World Tour has hit 500,000 downloads on Google Play. We don't know on iOS; it's not been revealed yet. But so that's doing good, considering it only
we'll see.
A week ago. Soft launched back in August, but it has grown for a Web3 mobile game, grown well in 2 months.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. With both those mythical games, with NFL Rivals and Nitro Nations, it's sort of a little bit about the marketing. So I imagine it's normally easier to market Google Android games in the beginning. So that's probably the reason that they're highlighting the Google stuff. But you make more money off iOS people, so it's sort of a bit of a balancing act.
Yeah. So Mighty Action Heroes has just become available as well on Google Play now. And what else? Have we got any more, John?
So BigTime sort of did it go live? I don't know. It's one of these things. So BigTime, which has been in development for years and years and years, launched its Preseason. So it's a really interesting game. It's from the guy, co-founder of Decentraland, and he raised, I can't remember, officially they said they raised 15 million. I think they raised more, or it's cost them more. And he's put together quite an experienced team, and it's it's like a multiplayer sort of loot dungeon sort of thing. It has a very interesting art look, I think. It runs on their own blockchain, and they have their own infrastructure. And people have been able to play. I mean, I first played it over a year ago. If you owned a certain NFT, you could sort of play it. They had like past NFTs. I didn't really get into it. It's not the sort of game I play very much of. But you could just see it was a sort of proper product, and as I say, this sort of elongated sort of art style, quite pastel-y colours. and you're supposed to play as a squad. That was the problem I had. You're supposed to play as a squad of 4 players. So if you just play as a single player, it's very hard. But anyway, the big thing I suppose is I've not tested this out yet, but with this preseason going live, they've also unlocked a whole bunch of sort of in-game functionality, and you have this thing where you have sort of land and you have these sort of crafting stations in there, and you can craft. If you remember, hourglasses, and they allow you to do certain things in the game. I can't quite, I haven't done it yet, and I can't quite remember the white paper. But for all that to work, they need to release the token. So this is the first time their token's gone live, the big time token. And so that's sort of interesting that they've been running this game live for like 18 months or so without a token, and now the token's gone live. And obviously, it's one of these things where people, players need the token to do the things in the game. Obviously, some people will speculate that the token's going to go up. I mean, it's gone up quite a lot since when it launched a couple of days ago. But it's sort of, very different from, a year ago when people would just launch a token and then say, buy the token and you'll have a game in 6 months' time if you're lucky, sort of thing, or that sort of thing. So we'll see. I guess it'll be interesting if the token just doesn't just the price sort of stays the same, then that'll be good. Obviously, there's not that many people playing the game. Thousands of people, I'd imagine, at the moment. So they got still a bit of a while to build it up. But it is interesting that this is sort of a very different approach to what we've seen before. And it's the approach that most people are taking now. Like Boomland, they announced their tokens going live next week. I mean, a very similar thing where people need that token to upgrade their in-game characters. So there's sort of pent-up demand for it. We'll see again how that plays out. It's always, when you launch a token, you've sort of given up control to some degree to the market to see how they're going to price it. But it's just a much more holistic way of launching tokens now to what we have seen up to this point. So I think it's good for the sector.
Good. Because you reminded me of the most important news of the week there. Right, and on that note, we're going to end for today, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.